We have recessions in the West roughly every 7 years. We haven't had one for almost 10 years, so at some point there will be a slowdown. I don't think there's any evidence, though, that in 2018 or 2019 we're going to have a recession. Beyond that, we can't say. Right now, the U.S. economy is in very good shape. We're growing at about 4% last quarter, a little bit more than that. We'll probably grow about 3% for the year. That's very, very good. We haven't grown at 3% annually since 2005. So I think the U.S. economy is doing quite well.
You know, if we compare economies, that's one thing. If we compare markets, it's something entirely different. And we've seen a shakedown in emerging markets. We've seen a shakedown, particularly in the Chinese markets. Meanwhile, the United States is doing pretty well. And in many ways, we can tie that to trade. To what extent do you worry that perhaps the escalation of trade rhetoric that we've seen brings forward your date of 2020 for a recession?
Well, I didn't say 2020. I said that nothing in 2018 or 2019. I can't predict too far in advance, so I just don't know. I've been predicting recessions for 5 years, and I've been wrong every one of the last 5 years.
Okay, we'll be very careful.
But I would say that right now, the tariffs are something that people worry about. The business community is actually pretty happy with what's going on in the economy now because the deregulatory movements have been very pleasing to the business community. The tax cuts have been very pleasing. The thing that is a little concerning is the tariffs. But the tariffs are still relatively small. We're a $20 trillion economy. The tariffs are maybe 50 billion right now, or maybe up to 200 billion at some point. It's still small, so we haven't seen the impact. If it were to go on for quite some time, the tariffs were to increase, we get in a big trade war, it'd be concerning. Right now, it's not a major factor.
I mean, as you said, if we're looking at the numerical numbers here, that the magnitude of these numbers, it's pretty small, but it's the uncertainty effect. And we've also got tech companies, big businesses in the United States saying, look, to this administration, please don't do this. You said this administration understands the importance of that relationship with China. Do you think that's still the case?
I think the administration's posture is to get the best deal it can from China. And sometimes you negotiate and ask for things you may not get. And sometimes things work out. So, for example, with the EU, the administration ultimately worked out a deal, I think, on automobiles. It hasn't been papered yet, but it will happen. So I think you see a lot of fire and smoke, but right now it's not clear that this is going to have a long-term impact. Nobody in the business community would want a long-term tariff war, but I'm not sure that will happen yet.
Is that what investors are saying to you, that actually they're not concerned, or are they concerned? And you're saying, look, don't worry about this, it's not that big, and
well, investors are always concerned because that's what investors get paid to do. But I think right now, I think they're very happy with where the U.S. economy is going. You don't know how long it's going to last this well, but it's going to be pretty good for a while, we believe. I think people are concerned about China slowing down a little bit, but remember, China's growth slowing down is still 6.5%. We'd love to have 6.5% growth.
Yeah, we would. What about Europe here? Because we are seeing, at least in the short to medium term, equity outflows. I think it's now 26 weeks of equity outflows. The beauty of your business is you have fingers in every pies around the world. Are you worried there, or do you see this as opportunity perhaps too?
Well, when prices are down and when there's uncertainty, that's a good time for private equity investors because sometimes you get things more cheaply. But we are worried about Brexit. Brexit is still unresolved a couple years after the vote. If I had my way, I would ask the British to vote again, but obviously I'm not British and they're not going to listen to me. I do think that there is some uncertainty in the markets. In Carlyle's case, we haven't made a buyout in Europe, in England since 2016. Nothing really in 2017, nothing in 2018. We're still waiting to see where the markets are going to settle out. And the uncertainty in the UK government also gives people some concern. So at some point, I think there needs to be a resolution. Until then, Brexit is a concern of it in Europe.
How worried are you of a no-deal Brexit situation? We've been talking during the show today. We are now 200 days out, talking about splits in the Labour Party, a potential leadership challenge perhaps coming. I mean, this is a real mess.
It's not what would be optimal. I think the business community would prefer something better than this, but the government of Britain is not run to please the business community necessarily. So they'll sort this out. I am confident that before the deadline rises and comes to pass, there will be something resolved. But I do think it's not very pleasant right now.